Today, December 23rd, is the birthday of the Federal Reserve. On this day in 1913, President Woodrow Wilson signed the Federal Reserve Act into law. A quote often attributed to him, though its origin is debated, captures the sentiment. "I am a most unhappy man. I have unwittingly ruined my country. A great industrial nation is controlled by its system of credit." Whether he actually said those words doesn't matter. The ruin is visible. But the story doesn't start in 1913. It starts 3 years earlier, in November 1910, in a private train car with the shades drawn, heading south to Georgia. 7 men boarded that train in Hoboken, New Jersey. They were told to use only first names: Nelson, Paul, Frank. They were told not to be seen together. If the press found out these 7 men were in the same room, the stock market would have crashed and there would have been riots. Why? Because these men represented an insane concentration of wealth, by some estimates close to a quarter of the world's capital at that time. Who were they? Senator Nelson Aldrich, the political boss of the Senate, father-in-law to John D. Rockefeller, Jr. Abraham Piatt Andrew, Assistant Secretary of the Treasury. Frank Vanderlip, President of the National City Bank of New York, representing the Rockefellers. Henry Davison, Senior Partner at J.P. Morgan Company. Charles Norton, President of the First National Bank of New York, a Morgan bank. Benjamin Strong, head of J.P. Morgan's Bankers Trust. Paul Warburg, partner at Kuhn Loeb & Co., representing the Rothschild banking dynasty of Europe. Rockefeller, Morgan, Rothschild, the Treasury, the Senate, all in one train car. They traveled to Jekyll Island, an exclusive hunting club off the coast of Georgia. It was the playground of the ultra-rich. They told the staff they were there to hunt ducks, but they didn't bring shotguns. They brought fountain pens. For 9 days, these men sat around a table and drafted the legislation that would become the Federal Reserve Act. The secret Jekyll Island meeting is not a conspiracy theory. It's documented history. Frank Vanderlip wrote about it in the Saturday Evening Post later. He bragged about it. He called it the actual conception of what is now the Federal Reserve System. What's debated is how much of the final system was decided there. What's not debated is who was in the room. Why the secrecy? Because, as I told you yesterday, the American people hated the idea of a central bank run by Wall Street. So Paul Warburg, the genius architect of the system, told them, "We cannot call it a central bank, and we cannot let the public know that Wall Street wrote the bill." So they designed a masterpiece of misdirection. They created a structure that looked decentralized: 12 regional banks, a board in Washington appointed by the president. But the real power, the Federal Open Market Committee, the control of interest rates, remained in the hands of the bankers. The purpose of the meeting was simple: cartelization. In a free market, banks compete. If a bank makes bad loans, it goes bust. The depositors lose money. It keeps the system honest. But big banks hate competition, and they hate going bust. They wanted a lender of last resort. They wanted a mechanism that would guarantee that if they gambled and lost, the taxpayer would bail them out. They wanted to privatize the profits and socialize the losses. And that is exactly what the Federal Reserve is. It is an insurance policy for the banks, paid for by the inflation of your currency. Paul Warburg said during the meeting, in essence, "We need a system where we can expand credit at will." Translation: we need a magic money printer. They returned to Washington. They handed the bill to Senator Aldrich. He introduced it. It failed at first. They rebranded it. They waited. And finally, on December 23, 1913, they got their wish. The creature from Jekyll Island was born. And what has this creature done in 112 years? Has it stabilized the economy? Since 1913, we have had the Great Depression, the stagflation of the 70s, the dot-com crash, the 2008 financial crisis, and the 2020 inflation spike. Has it protected the value of the currency? By most measures, the dollar has lost over 97% of its purchasing power. A 1913 dollar could buy a bag of groceries. A 2025 dollar buys a few slices of bread. Has it reduced inequality? The gap between the rich, who get the new money first, the Cantillon effect, and the poor, who get the inflation, is the widest in history. The Federal Reserve did exactly what it was designed to do. It protected the banks, it funded the government's wars, it enriched the asset holders, and it impoverished the worker. It wasn't a failure, it was a perfect success for the men in the train car. Today, December 23rd, is a birthday, but we shouldn't be celebrating. We should be taking notes. America didn't die in a single night, but that was the night its monetary sovereignty was quietly signed away. We are tenants in a monetary system they designed. The money in your pocket is their scorecard. And every time prices go up, every time your savings don't stretch as far, remember Jekyll Island. Remember that it wasn't an accident, it was a heist, not with masks and guns, but with fountain pens and Christmas deadlines. But here's the good news. The creature is old. It is sick. The math is breaking the system they built. Cycles don't spare central banks. The era of the Fed is ending. The question is, what replaces it? Digital slavery through CBDCs or decentralized freedom through Bitcoin and hard assets? That is the war of 2026. Here is the architect's early protocol. First, stop storing your entire life in a melting unit. The dollar loses value by design. Start moving a portion of your savings into hard assets, gold, Bitcoin, or both. Second, learn at least one way to move value outside the banking grid. Whether it's self-custody Bitcoin, physical precious metals, or both, have an option that doesn't require permission. Third, start educating yourself on CBDCs now before they arrive wrapped in safety and convenience. Understand what programmable money means for your freedom. They spent 9 days building the cage. You can spend 9 hours learning the lock. I am the architect, and I will see you tomorrow.